Joining us now, our first guest today from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. He is their Chief of Parks and Recreation. Ron Olson joins us again on the Oakland County Megacast. Ron, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
How are you? How's your team been doing at the DNR?
Well, we're real busy with a lot of things. As you know, we opened camping back up on the 22nd of June, and things are uh, really going well from that standpoint. But the parks are extremely busy with a lot of not only people seeking to go camping and doing outdoor activities, but also people, day users, and going to the water and the beaches and that sort of thing.
It's been getting really nice over the last few weeks here, other than, of course, the major heat wave we had last week. But even going into the 4th of July weekend, the weather was excellent. It was nice and sunny. There wasn't really any wet weather out there that was maybe would deter people from going to the parks or going camping as it reopened at the late end of June. How much of a spike, if any, did the state parks see in people that were eager to go camping over the 4th of July weekend and even since?
Well, we have had many parks that have seen day users, particularly more than they've seen in a long time. Obviously, over the 4th of July, when the weather is decent, historically we've had big crowds. But on the beginning prior to the 4th and even days after, we experienced very high numbers of people. And some of our staff, have we've talked to them around, that they've said that the years that they've been, one of the staff said they had been working for 10 years, and it's the most people I've seen at their particular park in that span of time around this time of year. So it definitely, people are eager to get out, and whether it's to go hiking, walking, swimming, just lounging around, having a barbecue or what have you, and going on trails has been very robust.
Speaking of staff, how has your staffing levels been this summer? Has it been hard for you to get that summer help in, or have you seen an influx because the students maybe want to work outside instead of inside?
Well, it started out slow. Obviously, we weren't able to hire our staff because of a hiring freeze, and then we did get an exception to that. So we were behind probably at least 6 or 8 weeks from where we were in the beginning, because we would have had all of our nearly 1,500, 1,800 summer workers or short-term workers. They would have been all on board and hired by early May, some much earlier than that. But we did not start that process for weeks after we normally would. So that consequently, as time has gone on, we've been playing catch up, and we're still behind in some parks. We have not been able to hire them. We do have people that have come back, and we do have some new staff, but by and large, some had gotten other jobs because they didn't want to wait, or some other dynamic occurred. We're not quite sure about the, the federal dollars that were afforded people on unemployment and things like that, if that delayed some people making a choice to come and work. But we have had some very dedicated people, by the way, work for us. But so we're still trying to fill jobs. And of course, if anybody's watching and still interested in summer employment, we'd be more than happy to entertain an application.
Ron Olson with us, the Chief of Parks and Recreation Division at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, or the DNR, as many of us refer to it in the state of Michigan. In terms of onboarding and training this staff, I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it now than maybe in the past, as you're also taking into account COVID-19 guidelines and safety procedures on site at all these various different parks and with their different amenities.
Yes, it's made it exceedingly difficult, because typically when you have everybody, the core staff all hired, it's easier to have orientations and develop consistent messages. We do have we've developed some video types of training and orientation information so that as people have onboarded, that they can get the similar message. But also the protocols regarding the COVID situation and the proper cleaning techniques and the PPE, or the personal protection equipment, and how to use that and to wear it. And they are required to to go through all of that and demonstrate that they have read and understood the material, because we certainly want to make sure that staff are fully informed and follow the right guidelines for their safety and so forth. But we do have all the proper equipment according to the CDC, and staff are required to wear the masks, and gloves were appropriate, or shields, depending on the activity that they're engaged with, or engagement with the public. And we've positioned things in such a way that when we do check campers in and things like that, we can try to keep folks outside, and we do have proper panels and screens so that we can protect not only the user but the staff.
Ron Olson with us. He's the Chief of Parks and Recreation Division at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. With us on the Oakland County Megacast across our family of TV and radio stations. Ron, as people are returning to the parks and more services have become available in the last few weeks, what are some things that maybe are still unavailable, certain facilities, certain activities that are not permitted at our state parks, so that people who are going to our state parks to do a variety of different activities know what they can and cannot engage in?
Well, the drinking fountains, sounds like it's not that big of a deal, but those are all closed, and some people depend on those to get water, and we don't have that because that's something that's difficult because of the nature of a drinking fountain. But we've tried to encourage people to bring their own water supplies and things like that, especially on these hot days, to be equipped on their own. We have opened up many of the facilities. There's a few that have been curtailed. It took us a while to get the interpretive centers back going and gathering spots. We still have places like on Belle Isle where we have the aquarium and the conservatory. Those are still closed, and many of our indoor venues are still closed because of the dynamics of indoor gatherings. But the outdoor areas, for the most part, are available, including playgrounds. We're just having people use their common sense and try to avoid that. In some areas, we don't have, we haven't had up till more recently, like kayak and canoe rentals and things like that people are used to, but those are evolving and some of those are becoming available. So it's been an evolution of things where we have opened things up, but there's still not everything is completely open, but most facilities are. But again, we're encouraging people to take their precautions and bring hand sanitizers and things like that.
Ron, there's been a lot of talk about hypotheticals with the increase in cases and some concerns being arisen about the future here in Michigan in regards to battling the COVID-19 pandemic and what a second shutdown, so to speak, would look like. In the case of our state parks, if regulations were to be pulled back, what would that look like at our state parks? How would that affect our state parks going forward?
Well, I think that we were an essential service from the beginning, and we did have restricted access to places where people could gather, and we had minimum staffing and eliminated indoor bathrooms and all of those sorts of things, and defaulted back to just basic sanitary situations where we were asking people to, if they had refuse or trash, to take it out with them or dispose it in a dumpster. And we eliminated trash cans and things like that, and to try to provide minimal services and to minimize contact of our staff with the kinds of normal things would happen. So as we've opened things back up and we opened up our bathrooms and things like that, if things did retreat back, we do know that parks are outdoor experiences, and the predominance of what we do is outdoors. So that takes away the situation regarding indoor spaces. But if things ratcheted back, we'd have to take a look at the indoor things and any of the other gathering spots. And it could be that some of those spaces like fishing piers and things like that might get curtailed and be closed back down again to access. But the camping by its nature is the sites are separated and things like that. So it's not like a gathering of people that would come to a big event. And speaking of events, that right now in the lower part of the lower peninsula, most of the lower peninsula is limited to 100 people that socially distance at any gathering. And then in the Traverse City zone or region in the UP, it's 250. But if things go forward, it could be that events that are planned for August, anticipating the fact that that number would either remain the same, or if the anticipation was that perhaps the zones would move to more open things up. But right now, it could be, if it went the other direction, it could be that 100 and the 250 numbers that we've talked about, where the limits are based on the region, could be ratcheted back, which then would curtail other kinds of activities. So there's a lot of different things that could happen, but right now we're staying with the orders and complying with them as best we can. The other dynamic that occurred was the requirement of the mask to be worn indoors, and now it's required with a potential fine for violators and things like that. So those are things we're trying to message strongly to ensure that people do their part when they come, regardless of where it is, to wear that mask indoors, period, unless there's somebody that has an exemption. But the majority of people, we want them to do that, as does of course, our staff. And that's a very key part of the current situation.
Ron, anything else you'd like to touch on today before we let you go?
No, just all I can say is we ask people to enjoy themselves outdoors, but do it right and do it responsibly. And we know it's a little inconvenient, but it'll help keeping us from going backwards. And if everybody does their part, that's great. And second of all, if anybody is looking for a summer job outdoors in a park, to let us know. And we do have openings scattered around the state.
Well, Ron, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ron Olson from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources with us on the Oakland County MegaCast.